Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the webinar, The Correctional Classroom, Cultivating a Culture that Promotes Creativity. Before I introduce our presenter, I want to introduce Robert Breitbart with our partners at Burlington English. So Robert.
Well, Bethel, thank you so much. And everybody, this is one of my just favorite subjects. So when I was a local director, had the pleasure and being blessed to work with some phenomenal folks running jail education and job training programs. So I'm glad that's been a part of my past and a big part of Burlington English. We have so many success stories from all over the country. So a particular big shout out. I know we got a lot of great folks in the chat, but we're just having amazing things back in my home state of Florida. Just did a fantastic study with the great folks at Oregon Corrections that are seeing amazing gains. So again, this is just, I'm so excited to hear Coach Smedley. I've got my seatbelt ready and ready to go. So genuinely in so many ways, particularly with populations that are incredibly underserved. And those are our folks, you know, in correction situations whose English is a new language, need to improve not just their English, but really get ready for successful re-entry. So for many of you, you know, you use Burlington Core on the outside. Well, for behind bars, it's perfect as well. It's everything teachers need for projectable lessons. We've got folks using it with trustees in certain states, but as you know, we really shine even in an asynchronous manner. And particularly, I love the incredible research that if we could just get folks jobs, and if we could get them ready, you know, before release, ready to go get that job, and also the skills to keep that job. So I think it's fantastic that in their time in a correctional facility, they can start working on everything that they need. So again, that job is waiting for them. And again, things like, as you can see on the screen, putting together resumes. I love it that, you know, because they might be working on their own, there's models that are going to guide them, you know, through the learning. And as you can see, I just highlighted, everything gets put in a digital portfolio for them. So even if they should change facilities and what have you, it's going to follow them. And again, upon release, they're going to be, you know, particularly all set to go. Oh, I'm going to be quick, but I wish we had even more time.
That's great.
Because we've even
So why do you think you're right for this job?
And I love that. Tell us about a weakness.
I know how to choose clothes that will look good on the customer. I'm helpful and polite too. And customers like me.
That's it. He's hired. I love it. I love that all of that stuff can happen, you know, again, in any correctional facility. And once again, not just soft skills to get that job, but the soft skills, as you can see on the screen, to keep that job, which is such a challenge for anyone in any situation. So long story short, whatever you're trying to do to take someone from, you know, the streets to career, just know that we've got everything in one place. Burlington English, from career exploration and soft skills to hundreds of English for specific careers. And I've got scores and scores and scores of colleagues out there ready to help you. So please reach out to us, burlingtonenglish.com/contact. And with that, I'm putting my seatbelt back on, ready for Coach Smedley, and I'll turn it back over to Bethel. Thank you, friends.
Thank you, Robert. We value our partnership with Burlington English, and everyone just enjoy the webinar, and I'm going to turn it over to Alisa Smedley for her session.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Coach Smedley is broadcasting live from exotic Albany, New York, although I want to be in Venice. So thanks for coming. And I want you to pick up some ideas today to really stretch your imagination. But I do want to say one thing. If you haven't sat in on a Coach Smedley session, I'm going to give you my disclaimer. I am eccentric, but I'm mostly harmless, really. So if you haven't been here before and heard me, you know, I'm passionate about this one. So before we get started, I want to address the elephant in the room. Some of the things I'm going to suggest today, someone out there is sitting there thinking, how am I supposed to do all of that? She's asking me to do one more thing. I've got enough on my plate already. I know you're out there. I've done this work a long time. But to you, I would say, the prep work, the planning, it will give you huge returns on your investment. We're going to talk about your magic file cabinet today. That's where you keep all of your materials and lessons, those that you create, those things that you find in the news. You keep all of your stuff. And I'm going to show you how you can leverage that. Over 10 years, you can imagine I collected a lot of stuff and I recycle everything. Sometimes you need to spruce things up. I recycle my jokes. I still have my jokes from the 90s. They're coming back. So I want you to remove the barrier of how am I going to do that? Because trust me, I will show you how. And I have had days. Coach Smedley isn't always slap happy, exhilarated about the work. There are days when I want to grab my clear bag and walk out the door, but I didn't. I spent 10 years in a max facility, and a lot of the ideas today, I'll tell you, they've been proven and they work. So let's get started. Please blow up the chat if you have questions, comments, wishes, or dreams. I want to hear it. So this is our beginning. We're going to talk about creativity. That's all we're going to talk about today is creativity. Now, I want to show you my uniform. I show up to work on my unicycle and dressed as a clown. Well, not really, but sometimes I wish I could. I love to bring creativity into our environment because what we do is such serious work. Let's look at what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about, is creativity safe? I've had those experiences where officers are looking at me like, what's she doing now? I will show you how to make sure that they are safe, your creative ideas. We're going to talk about that magic file cabinet I told you about. And then we're going to have some actual creative ideas that I'm going to leave you with. Okay? So you put your seatbelts on like Robert did. Creativity is everywhere, and it doesn't cost a lot. I found this and wanted to share it today. A group presented this poster to their bosses on Bosses Day, and all they did was take candy wrappers and put some really thoughtful words behind it. Take a minute and take a look at that. I thought that was so creative, and their boss felt really appreciated. I think my favorite part is at the end. You know, this is from your nerds in the fiscal department. But creativity is everywhere. Now let's talk about what we do. I know we're from all different audiences here. Some of you may be with community colleges, some may actually be behind the wall, but just generally, the population we work with, I wanted to share, this is how we're perceived. This is how our friends, what they think we do. We're saints, right? Our mom thinks that we're in danger every second of the day. Some of the COs think we're preschool teachers. Some of our students, they think we're drill sergeants. We think we're just awesome educators. But some days we actually are dragging folks across the finish line to getting their equivalency or their high set or their certifications or whatever goal we're trying to help them get. We're going to drag them across concrete, okay? I hope you like that. I love this. It looks like you all do too. So let's talk about creativity. Is it safe? Everything you do should be what I call correction safe. And that means that you vet it through custody and security. I love to bring in innovative things, but I always get them checked out first. I wanted to bring in a board game. It was a great board game that talked about getting your first job. And they had these little metal pieces. So of course, custody and security wasn't going to let that happen. But they compromised. They told me if I would take a picture of each game piece and then mount it on cardboard. So I had the same effect, but it was modified. So if you approach custody and security, and that's why it's so important to build good relationships, you need allies in your building, folks. Don't be that annoying teacher that's always keeping students over, always intervening when you shouldn't. There are times when you should, there are times when you have to stay back. You are a guest in their house if you didn't know that. But if you communicate and ask them, I was able to get through pretty much most of the things I wanted to do, although they won't let me come to work on my unicycle. but you must vet everything, even down to the materials that you use. Of course, no sharp objects, real sharp scissors and that kind of thing. But as you're planning activities, you don't have to spend a lot on materials. I know in the beginning, I didn't have a big budget for my program. I had to prove it. Once I started getting the numbers, I started getting the budget. But how do you get the numbers? That's a lot of what we're going to talk about today, is that student engagement to get your numbers up, and then the money hopefully will follow to get materials. So a lot of what I shared today, I did on a shoestring budget, just using imagination. So keeping things correction safe. And if you're not sure, go get it vetted with your custody and security area. Make sure the activities are inclusive. What do I mean? You have to have activities that reach every one of your students. I have a kid in college right now, and her favorite class is a teacher who gives 3 different options for every assignment. The writers can write, the science kids can experiment, the music kids can write a rap or create a lyric. So he reaches every learning style, and my kid loves this class. So if you can have the same assignment, but offer multiple ways to do it, you help other students access it. One activity that I use, and I hope you're taking notes as we go through, we'll get this presentation at the end. But one activity I did was taking a blank US map. I'd lay it on the table, I'd divide my class into teams, and I say, okay, fill the map out. And they're like, well, we don't know geography, Coach Smedley. And I'm thinking, yes, you do. I said, think about where your favorite sports teams are. Think about where your cousins live. Where have you gone on vacation, if you've ever gone? So I got to, you're kind of nudging them along, and little by little, they filled out the entire blank map. And the kids that didn't read that well, I call them kids. We know they're our students, they're adults, but they're my students. The ones that didn't read well, they could participate because they knew stuff. So the quiet student that I never hear from is now pulled in and engaged because there's something that he or she knows. A big part of engagement is helping them shake the rust off of their brains, and also letting them have the confidence, build their confidence that they can participate. So however you do it, make sure that your work is inclusive. Even as you're putting teams together, match up some good connections, the leader and the quiet student, people from different parts of the country, mix it up. The more different they experience, I call that exposure. And that helps our students. They have to get used to working with all kinds of people, because when they leave us, they're going to go to a job site. And there are going to be many different kinds of folks. So all of my activities also have a component that is exposing them to something new. All right, so we have correction safe, we have inclusive, and then the last one, there's that extra work I was talking about. It needs to be well planned. Who likes to go to an event where they're still running around with chef hats and putting burners out and spreading out tablecloths? That's tacky. Don't do that. Don't do that. When a student walks in your space, everything should be laid out and prepared for them. That sends a subliminal message that you care and that you're providing them with the very best. You don't have to have the latest smart board and all your fancy stuff to be prepared and show the students that you are ready to go. And I'm not criticizing, I'm saying this very respectfully. I don't want to step on any toes. But if you are prepared, your students will feel that. And I know there's not enough hours in the day to do all of this, but how can you leverage your time being well organized and prepared? You're going to learn more about that in our Magic File Cabinet, which is coming up. The bottom line is the creativity safe? Coach Smedley thinks it boils down to engagement. With students, you must first connect with their heart, then their head will follow. When I was at the Max facility, I had a radio. I had something called a body sensor. That was so interesting. As the officer was outfitting me with my body sensor, it was a new thing. They said, I said, well, how does this work? And he said, oh, coach, if you're ever horizontal, it'll send out a signal. I'm like, okay, that's comforting to know that if I'm laid out, that it'll send out a signal and help will come. So fortunately, I never got horizontal on the job, But having that radio, that body sensor, but out of all of those, the most important tool I had for my safety was my engagement. I knew many of the students in the program areas. I engaged them. I was kind but firm, and I tried to keep my word. That's something else. If you just keep your word, that goes a long way. And it might not mean that you have solved their problem. It might mean that you just give them an update. I didn't forget you. I'm waiting on the other department, but as soon as I hear, I'll let you know. That goes a long way. So keep your word. It's how you carry yourself. And that will go so far. So the bottom line, the engagement is a big tool that you have. Now let's talk about this magic file cabinet. I hope you're taking notes along the way here. I'll peek over at the chat when I can, but I prefer that you put any questions in the Q&A because you all are blowing up the chat. So if you have a question, drop it in the Q&A and we can see it, okay? So the magic file cabinet, there are three things. Your magic file cabinet needs to be comprehensive. And by comprehensive, I mean, I don't care what you teach, but everything is related. So if you're the vocational teacher, you should still have some reading material in there, have some math activities. You want to be comprehensive because all of those skills are going to be needed. I first got this idea when my daughter, who's you've heard, she's in college now, but when she was in elementary school, I visited her school and I was in the gym and the gym teacher had a US map on the floor. And I'm like, what's a map doing here on the gym floor? They had an activity where they would bounce the ball on a state. That was their objective. He'd call out a state and the kids were supposed to bounce the ball on that state. I thought that was brilliant. So they're getting the physical activity, but they're also learning geography as a byproduct. So don't think so narrow. Oh, I teach fill in the blank. You teach everything because they're watching you. And once you've engaged with them, they're looking to you for more information about a lot of stuff. So make it comprehensive. Include a lot of different materials, just keep it organized. And we'll talk more about that. The upfront preparation. You may have to do some research. You may have to put packets together. You may have to cut out construction paper, make shapes. I don't know. But whatever it is you have to do, I promise you, the return on investment will be there. Because if everything is in the envelope, the folder, the packet, whatever the format and packaging looks like, if everything is in there, you can send a sub in to do a lesson. Oh, it's in the third drawer of my cabinet. Look for this activity. Everything is in there. Have the instructions, how it works, even put down what could go wrong. Because sometimes, I'll admit, sometimes coach bombs the first time I try a new activity, but I keep at it. And eventually it'll get better. You find out what didn't work, what was confusing to the students. So that upfront preparation, I can't stress that enough. I hope I haven't lost anybody. Let me look at the numbers. Okay, we haven't gone down. We still have 155 people. I'm watching. But the extra work is worth it and it'll make your job easier. It really will. I'll talk about this briefly. One thing that's helped me stay in this work is self-care. That is very important to me. I have to be happy. So we're going to talk about Coach Smedley's happy place in a few slides. So your magic file cabinet needs to be comprehensive. You have to do the upfront preparation and then the ongoing maintenance. You may have to spruce up a folder or replenish the copies. If you have something that's consumable, just make some more copies. Always keep a master. You don't want to lose your original and then you're like, what did I have? So have a master book and make sure you keep enough copies. So that ongoing maintenance, that will be a little bit of work. But if you do most of the work up front, you're set. I live by a quote, measure twice, cut once. So I'm going to do a great job up front, and then I'm just going to get busy doing my thing. Okay, so that is your magic file cabinet. Okay, we're going up in our numbers. We have 159. Yes, we haven't lost anyone. So here's what my magic file cabinet looked like before COVID when they sent me home. But I had these different categories. Now, my job was running the Workforce Development Center, so I helped the guys get jobs. But I had life skill information, I had current events, I had academic skills, whatever was needed. And even criminal thinking, I know that sounds politically incorrect, but they are not criminals, but their behavior is criminal. That's law. But having all of this information at your fingertips, it positions you as an expert. If something comes up and Billy is struggling with his math, I actually had this. I went to my magic file cabinet, I pulled out some flashcards. So during a one-on-one session, I sat here with a 22-year-old and we did multiplication, his fact cards. Have what you need. If you see interesting things, constantly update your magic file cabinet. And if you have any questions about what this looks like, please reach out. Coach Smedley is totally available to you. I've made 150, 160 new friends today. So reach out if you need the support. This is all doable. Bottom line is organization. Your magic file cabinet is a vibrant source of classroom materials at your fingertips. It's organized, it's well-stocked, and it's flowing timely material. Okay, some of that's hyperbole, but I'm creative. What am I gonna do? But do you get what I'm saying? That magic file cabinet, you want to have one. If you don't have one, you can start it tomorrow. But gathering materials and having it organized. A lot of us have good stuff, but we can't find it in the moment. You want to be able to go right to that file cabinet and pull out what you need in the moment. Okay? Creativity in the classroom. Now we're getting closer to some real ideas here, people. Whatever you do, if it's something that could be taken out of the room, have a check-in and check-out process. You absolutely have to have that, because even though I always built a learning community where we had somewhat of an honor system, everybody's not going to comply. So have a check-in and check-out process. And I was very clear. If I don't have 12 ducks come back in, and you'll see my rubber ducks in a minute, but if I don't have 12 ducks come back, I pull out some gloves just for a simulation and say, okay, I'm going to call the officer in here. We're going to do a pat down. Leave my ducks in the room. You can make a joke out of it, because I always had an officer that was willing to run in there and pat them down. But try to first build a learning community with an honor system. But as a backup, let them know we are checking things in and we're checking them out. If it comes up short, I'm going to call an officer in here. Number 2, modify it as needed. If you find that certain learning styles or abilities aren't fitting, then you just figure out, how can I modify this activity? One activity can lead to 5 different iterations of it. So keep that in the back of your mind. Be flexible. None of this is rigid and written in stone. You have to be flexible. And finally, you set the tone. I can't stress that one enough. You set the tone. In one of my positions, and I have been an employee, I've been a contractor, I've been a volunteer. You know, I know this from a lot of different sides, folks. But in one of my situations, I had a coworker who would he'd walk in the room, I have everything set up, and he'd say, these are grown men. You think they're gonna like to see whatever I had that day, rubber ducks or, whatever. And he'd say, you're gonna insult them, So he's walking around with his coffee mug. It'll never work. And I said, okay. What he didn't know is that I trusted the process, and I knew I was prepared, and I knew they knew how excited I was about helping them. The students would come in, as long as you set it up properly, build up some excitement, deliver it in a fun way, and then do a debrief. You will be amazed at what they will trust you to bring them. Now, you don't do that your first day. You don't know the students. You don't even do that your first week or 2. But once things settle down and you have a new cohort and you get to know the students, that's when you can start bringing in fun things. I've had more than one student tell me over the years, Coach, I couldn't sleep last night. I couldn't wait to come to class today. That let me know that they're thinking about the program even when they're not in your presence. And that's when you know what you're doing works. I had students say, I don't even feel like I'm incarcerated when I come in here. because the room was always neat, clean, well-stocked, colorful, and very inviting. That touches students on an emotional level that is not something they teach you in education programs. When you start, not in the prisons at least. Most of my training when I first started was don't go through that door. Whatever you do, return your keys over here, have your clear bag. You know, it was all very correctional. No one told me how to interface with the students when I was in there alone with no officer. It's like, okay, now what? Well, the first thing I did just came naturally. I engaged them. I tried to understand them, get to know them, learn their names, learn something about them. An activity that I did was mail. Every week I'd give out mail. And mail would go to every student and everybody would get something different. So that created excitement because they're like, well, what'd you get? And what about you? What did you get? I had a student that loved motorcycles, and I was at a car dealership, and they also sold bikes and stuff. So I grabbed one of the brochures and I made a copy of the contents. And I said, you know, I know you like motorcycles. I saw this and thought about you. So that was his meal for the week. Someone else got the information about elevator repair. He kept talking to me about wanting to be an elevator repair person. I don't even know how that works. The coach researched it. I pulled out some information from the Department of Labor, and that was his meal. You see what I'm doing here? And sometimes it didn't require research. It may have just been something motivational. But if you can come up with little things to give each person, that gives a level of customization. And they know that you were really listening and paying attention to them. And believe me, if you do it once and put it in your magic file cabinet, I had that motorcycle information for the next cohort and the next cohort. You see how this is working? You can customize your program even if you were alone. And I have been alone with 36 students in the cohort, and I'm teaching 3 groups a week, 3 90-minute groups. A day. What am I saying? 3 90-minute groups a day, 3 times a week. I felt like I was in Vegas. Coach Smedley was doing my thing. But having my magic file cabinet was a great backup for me. And if you look it up once, if you put it together once, you will have it. So a check-in, check-out process, modify as needed, and then you set the tone. If you're excited, they'll be excited, however silly it seems. And the last thing I'll say about setting the tone, when I first meet students during orientation, I ask them, when did you stop liking school? And some of you have heard this before. They always would tell me in 4th grade. That's when they were lost. So I'll have a 22-year-old or a 52-year-old. 4th grade was when I just lost interest. And that just made me so sad. So you have given up on learning in 4th grade. So what that told Coach Smedley was, I've got to reconnect them to a love of learning. One way we unpack that is by saying that school is not the same as learning. School is external, it's the place. Learning is internal. It's more abstract. So we literally would sit down and I made a list. What is school and what is learning? They are 2 different things. Can I get an amen? Because if they've given up on school, that doesn't mean they have to give up on learning. And my job was to light the pilot light. I'm relighting that pilot light inside of them to help them find ways to become a lifelong learner. So that's why all the fun things, the color, the rubber ducks, my coworker didn't understand that all of those little things reached into the little boy or the little girl who loved school up until 4th. So changing the tone, and then what will happen, and I can tell you because I've been there, what will happen then is word will get out that your program is different. It was another program in our building, and the teacher came over. She says, well, how do you keep your numbers up? You know, we do pizza parties and we do cookies. And I told her, I'm not doing any of that. I'm sorry. And sometimes it's appropriate, but I'm not going to bargain with you to do something that's going to benefit you. And my students would hear this. I would tell them, you are not getting any snacks. You're a grown man. No, you're not getting any snacks, juice boxes. But you know what you are getting? An opportunity to build the life that you deserve. That's what you're getting. So with that said, I did implement something for the last few years I was there, where there was a movie theater across the street from our prison. It was in a mall. We got close to the manager, so they would donate a bag of popcorn. So what I would do was we would celebrate graduations. We'd have a movie in the afternoon. We'd set the classroom up like a theater. We'd have a movie that I'd bring from my Netflix account, and we'd eat popcorn and they could have juice. So that was kind of the only time I used food as an incentive, because you can over incentivize something and then you miss the message. So that was my way of doing that. Amen. I see a thumbs up out here. So creativity in the classrooms. Let's get started. Tell you some of the things that Coach Smedley has done. Oh, before we go, bottom line, adding creative activities allow our students to experience new things, to see new places, and imagine fun things to do after their release. I don't know how many of you have heard from your students that they don't do regular stuff. The first time I heard that, I'm like, what are you talking about? I had a student who said, Coach, I don't do the regular stuff that you people do. I said, oh, dear. Well, you know, regular stuff. You know, I'm from the streets. I'm from the hood. We do this. And, you know, I said, oh, okay. So regular stuff that doesn't get me shot. Is that what you're talking about? Regular stuff like doing laundry? I said, I don't know the last time I heard someone getting shot at the bowling alley or the laundromat. I said, but you guys go places that are magnets for danger. So if you mean regular, by regular, if you mean safe or you know, just community stuff, then yeah, I'm guilty. But it's so important that we let them know that regular things can be fun. I made the mistake once of asking a student what his hobby was. You know, here I am, Coach Smedley. Yeah, so what do you do for hobbies? And one student raised his hand. He was so excited. He said, Coach, I know. I smoke weed. I said, okay. I said, in some states, that's a new charge, dear. So smoking weed in and of itself is not a hobby. I said, bird watching, there's a hobby. Rock climbing. You know, I started going through this ridiculous list and they're looking at me like, what are you talking about? Because they had never been exposed. So we started looking at appropriate, healthy hobbies. That became a workshop, selecting a hobby when you get out. And I had them broken down by how much they cost. So there were the free things they could do, there were the moderate costs, and there were the more expensive hobbies. And it started exposing them to a lot of different things in terms of, wow, that could be fun. What does AA and all the 12-step programs teach? How do you have sober fun? Well, I'm helping them along with that because we're thinking about hobbies even before they get released. Excuse me, my phone is ringing. But that's the bottom line. You want to be that inspiration for your students. So let's look at some of the things the coach has done. Many of you have heard this before, the virtual field trips. What does that mean? That means you can take them anywhere. I could take students to Venice. If I show them the food from Venice, the clothing, pictures from important sites, how people get around, what's the transportation in Venice, you can make it come alive. And there is literally nothing off of the table. You can be as creative as you want to be, creating virtual field trips. I really love Starry Night down here. I had a student, I tell this story. I noticed that midway through my speech, he got bored. So he's sitting there looking up at the ceiling. Are any of you looking up at the ceiling? I can't see, but this kid was always looking up at the ceiling towards the end of my workshop. So I said, you know what? I went to maintenance and I asked them if we could put a poster up on the ceiling. And I put it in the general area where he sat. So the next time I was in class with him, he leans back and looks up and he's shocked. What is that? So he came up to me after class. Coach Smedley, got a poster on the ceiling. I said, yeah. And he said, what is that? I said, oh, that's a Van Gogh. Well, who's Van Gogh? Oh man, you don't know Van Gogh? Oh, you got to hear. And I started giving him information. See how this works? Even when they're bored and you're losing them, you can pull them back. You can pull them back. So these are some ideas for virtual field trips. Just some random things I pulled out. And they can be exotic or they can be just down to earth. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which is in my hometown, Cleveland, Ohio. Others would include national parks. Introduce them to the national park system. You can go to the website and pull off information and how to travel, how to plan to travel to national parks. And that could be more, even more, teaching them how to research, teaching them how to dream. That's what Coach Smedley was doing. Now, initially, I have to do the research. I have to bring the packets in, but again, they are reusable. You keep a class set. You check it often, but you can ignite that curiosity within our students just by exposing. I want to stop here too and talk about another thing with creativity. Sometimes you're not going to have a group that works on. I had one cohort in my 10 years, they still give me nightmares because it was a combination of a lot of different personalities and behavior. This one group, I was so fed up with them. I went home and called a colleague who was at a different facility. And I said, I don't know what to do with them. I can't wait for them to get out of here. And he said, that's interesting. He said, you know what, Coach Smedley? You're only as good as your weakest student. Aren't you you engage with everyone. So you mean you've met a group that you can engage? So them there are fighting words. So you know what Coach Smedley did? I came up with a strategy. I thought about it. I said, okay, let me remove the emotion. I don't know if you all have ever had that kind of COVID. Some of you may have it right now. And they are just, Ugh. So I thought about it. I said, okay, let me see. What am I feeling? I processed it with myself. What am I feeling? And then I said, you know what? I had former students that I was still in contact with because they would reach out when they needed a reference or they needed a copy of their resume, which I kept. I always keep any paperwork for 5 years after they're released because I hope I don't see them again, but maybe they'll call if they need something. So they would still call me. So I reached out to them. I said, you know what? I need your help. I said, will you send me pictures of what you're doing in your life now or record a video of what you learned here in the program? I need your help. And I told them about my COVID. Do you know, they started to say, oh, yeah. One kid I had to say, okay, I have enough photos of you. Thanks. But I went to my office the next week and created my wall of fame. And I started hanging pictures up, pictures that they sent in different settings. One was, he was sitting on his brand new car. Another one was at work with his work shirt on. Someone else had his own truck. He had his CDL, so he's a truck driver now. So they sent me these pictures and I just put them up. No big fanfare. But students started looking. It was in my office. So they're looking. They're like, what is that? I said, oh, don't worry about that. That's for students who listen to me and help me. Yeah, I help them change their lives. You don't concern yourself with that. I tried everything. I tried dragging them, encouraging, my kind words. Nothing worked. So then I just went down and said, okay, I'm going to do some psychology on you, psych ops. Nothing else worked. So I said, don't worry about that. And then they got competitive. I'm going to be on that wall. I said, maybe. And soon I went from having 3 student pictures, it filled up. I needed a second bulletin board because I had silently challenged them. The lesson that Coach Smedley learned is that I can't always be moving and just in their face and demanding. Nope, sometimes I have to be more subtle. So my wall of fame, and they all wanted to be there. I said, yeah, I sit there at my wall. I look over at students and I remember how hard they worked. I love them. That got them moving. Now they're competitive and they want to be on the wall. So I hope that helps somebody. But I got permission, of course. And I had it in my office so nobody could take a picture and put a hit out on me or anything. It was in my office. But it worked. It sent the message. And fortunately, that was the last cohort that gave me the blues like that. Okay, moving on. Here's another activity that I use, not in class. This is a packet. I am the queen of packets. I believe that class time, there will never be enough class time. So you need to be activating your time when you're away from the program. And we do a whole unit on time. There are 168 hours in a week. And I'm like, I see you for 3 hours or 6 if you come twice a week. I said, you've got to be using the rest of your time. And you know how I brought the point home? I said, do you all play spades? I know I have some card players in here. So sure, they raised their hand. I said, how often do you play cards? I said, well, let's be conservative. Let's say you play 4 hours a week. We did the math. I said, on an 18-month sentence, that is however many hours. I had the math written out on a form. I said, that's so many hours a month. That's so many hours over the course of your 18-month sentence or your 2-year sentence or whatever. I said, what else could you do with that time? And people don't think about time if they're not aware. All I did was increase their awareness. They're like, that is a lot of time. In some cases, it was 1,000 hours. I said, you could learn a language. You could study and pass your equivalency test. There's so many things you can do to invest in you. I'm not saying stop playing cards, but maybe reducing it and doing something else while you have the time. The minute they step out of our building or they have to go to work, everything starts speeding up. Use this time wisely. So one of the things I do is these packets. So this is something they can work on independently. This is extreme connect the dots. There are 1,000 numbers. And they have to sit there and put it all together. But you know what it teaches? Patience. It teaches precision. And then when it's done, they're amazed at what picture they have. It helps with their hand-eye coordination. I mean, there are so many positives. So having them do something this simple. And online you can find, I actually have books that have a lot of famous buildings in a extreme connect the dots. That is a thing, people. Let's move on. Now, here are my ducks. I told you about these ducks. And this is actually a training class. There was a church that was starting a reentry program. So these are some of their members. This is an actual training class Coach Smedley did. Look at the intensity. This lady was doing her job over here. But what the activity involves is I give them a case study, and that's what they're holding over here. So it tells a student's story. You know, Billy is however old and has these charges. You know, it just gives a background. So then we look at what are big ducks and what are little ducks. Because most problems that we face, we can put them in a category. A big duck takes longer, it's more complicated. And then there's a little duck that's easy. We can take care of that. And I have the students first do that for a case study, and sometimes several case studies, so they can build that skill and that muscle of prioritizing and seeing. Because one thing that happens with our students, they get overwhelmed. It feels like I've got to do everything. I've got so much to do and I'm not equipped. If I knew how to do it, I would have done it at 18. And now I'm 49. I don't know how to do it. They won't say that, but that's what's going on inside. So you are building their muscles, helping them prioritize. So what is a big duck? A big duck is getting your equivalence. A little duck is getting your birth certificate. So I had them take the case study and label their duck, whether it's a big duck or a little duck. So after a series of case studies, then I gave them a blank label for them to do their own ducks. You don't start with their own because they're overwhelmed. You start with other, out there, somebody else, and then you bring it home and have them do their own. And it's amazing how they're like, wow, that wasn't so hard. And now they have a plan. So this is one way I was teaching prioritizing and how to make it less emotional, make it more concrete. The mess they have to go back to and figure out when they get out. So that's my ducks in a row. And I mean it, have a system for accounting. I better get 12 big ducks and 12 little ducks or else you're going to get a pat down today. The other thing you need to do is understand patterns. Always be observant. And one thing I realized was the time period leading up to release can be extremely stressful for our students. Educators can lead activities that reduce student anxiety. And what do I mean by that? I noticed that as we got down to the 60 or 30-day mark, my best students were starting to unravel. I mean, literally, they weren't coming to class. They're getting in trouble. They can't sleep. They're anxious. Their stomach hurts. I got to go to medical, Coach Smedley. I'm like, what is going on? And they explained, I've got so much to deal with. I don't know where I'm going to live. I don't know how I'm going to pay the restitution. I don't know if I'm going to have a good parole agent. Are they going to be nice to me? Will they work with me? Or are they going to, mandate that I toe the line? I said, well, you need to toe the line anyway. But let's think about all the things you're facing that you're worrying about. So I came up with this. Label my sharks. I literally got a big poster board, and actually this student here is holding it. So after I create stuff, then I come around to conferences and start teaching stuff. So it's a cycle. So that's the actual poster board. And this is not, I just went to the dollar store, got some poster board, printed up some sharks. And the name of the boat is After Release. And the poor guy in there, you can't even see his face. He is worried sick. And he's got sharks heading his way. And on the large one, they're coming from afar. And some are right up on the boat. And I said, okay, let's label each of those sharks. And that became an activity. I did it as a group. I did a team activity. I gave it individually in a smaller version of the poster. And I was fascinated with how they labeled their sharks. Some of them put my kids, because I don't know how they're going to feel about me coming home. My addiction, my lack of skills. They were just so honest by getting it out and putting it on paper. So labeling their sharks became an activity to give a release. And you can play around with some version of that, either a big poster for classroom, laminate it and reuse it, and talk generally about sharks, or have each one do their own, label their own sharks. Be flexible. Now, your amazing space. I've already said that I understand you have to reconnect with the fourth grader inside of your students. But how do you do that? Utilize the space you have. Remember that ceiling? I had a poster mounted up there. You have some space. I have really built up. I've had a cubicle. I've had a 900 square foot classroom, and I've had a cart. In my various positions, that's what I had. Use what you have. Just decorate it, make it appeal. You also want it to be information rich. Everywhere they look, there should be some kind of information, even if it's something you can't talk about in class. You just don't have time. I understand that. You have a set curriculum and you've got to get through that material. But you have downtime, even while you're waiting for everyone to assemble, or maybe as a break in your day. You know what? We're going to take a break. Go look around the room. Look at the centers. But utilize your space. Use the space you have, make it information rich, and then encourage independent study. Sometimes I will just have a folder. So it may have an article on recycle, and I keep copies in there, and they could pick one up on their way out the door. I had a little shelf right by the exit, so they could pick up something that was interesting, and just teaching them information, because they've got time on their own. I don't have time to talk about recycling in class, but I can give it to them as a packet or as some independent study. So your amazing space. And we are making the home stretch here, folks. I'm almost done. I mentioned earlier about self-care and how important that is. For her self-care, Coach Smedley keeps a picture of the Mandalorian. I'm a science fiction nerd. Yes, I admit it. Don't judge me. I also have my comfort pillow. I don't know if you can see this, but this is my pillow for hard days. Just don't let the COs see you clutching this. They'll report you. But this is my happy place. I need something that reminds me that I have a life outside of this job. I have a life away from these demanding students. But something, it can be an image gallery on your computer, your screensavers. It can be a poster hanging up. Anything big or small that triggers your emotional side and takes you to a happy place. I encourage each of you, find your happy place, because that's how you will increase your shelf life in a very demanding job. I naturally love what I do. I'm passionate. but I have down days when your energy is low. I had a dream once. This is a true story. I had a dream that I was a battery and all of my students in my class were coming towards me with jumper cables. And that's how teaching is. We're meant to encourage them, lift them up, keep them going. Who encourages us? So you've got to find your happy place. That's a huge, huge part of self-care. Now, she doesn't even know I'm going to do this, but one of my favorite people in the world is Coach Angel Brown, and she's on the call. And that's her uniform to go to work. I don't know if they let you wear yours to work, Angel. I know they wouldn't let me bring my unicycle, but Coach Angel has a very inviting classroom. And here, let me show you. This is her door. Take a minute. Who wouldn't want to go and see what's happening inside there? It's amazing. And this doesn't cost anything, folks. You just decorate your door. I would make sure they're secure so your students can't pluck them off of your door. They will want everything that you put out. So make sure it's secure, or it's either inside your office or somewhere that's out of bounds. But encourage them through the environment, the classroom. That is huge. So thank you, Angel. Thank you for sharing that. Now, Coach Smedley has covered a lot of ground in this time, and I wanted to share my book with you, Practical Topics in Correctional Education. And one thing I'm known for is my transparency. I just keep it real. I don't know any other way to be. But in the book, I talk about everything. What makes a good correctional educator? How customer service factors into what you do. Exploring Saturn is a chapter I did about the ecosystem. You have all kinds of folks in the correctional building, or even if you're in the community, there's all kinds of groups and factions and all kinds of stuff going on. You need to understand your ecosystem. And that one-room schoolhouse, how does that work exactly? I talk about it. And what I want to do for you today, I'm giving you chapter 5, Your Amazing Space. That will be included with the recording and the PowerPoint from today. You'll also get chapter 5 of my book, Your Amazing Space. I talk about recruiting. How do you recruit? A good cohort starts with a good recruitment. So I have some interesting strategies for how I did my recruiting. And then this is advocacy. Dear coach, I need toilet paper. A student emailed me through our system. And the thing is, he wasn't my student. I don't know who this person was, but he knew that Coach Smedley got things done. So dear coach, I need toilet paper. It sounded urgent. So I talk about that. When do you advocate and when do you stay in your lane? How many of you have been told that? You need to stay in your lane. Well, sometimes I need to go help someone get toilet paper too. And then I talk about special interests. That's for the hobbies piece. And then the lockdown. And in the next generation, I would challenge any of you who have been doing this a long time, come out on the road, go to conferences and present. Share what you do. Like Angel shared with me her door, and she started doing conferences. I'm so proud of her. Share your knowledge. But another story for another time. But again, your free gift from Coach Smedley today will be Your Amazing Space. If you need some of the other stuff I talked about in the book, I wanted to make that available as well. And this will be in the packet. You can use the QR code. And it's $14.95, cost of the book, 10 chapters, and tons of ideas. But Your Amazing Space is yours just for showing up today. So thank you. That's my way of saying thanks. And finally is my contact information. Don't be a stranger. Stay in touch. And we conclude our lesson for today. Oh, someone else like The Mandalorian. Awesome. I'm going to catch up on the chat. So talk among yourselves. I love someone said they don't like babying their students, but we all need our happy place, especially coming out of trauma. Trauma-informed care is a thing. You've got to get strategies for that. Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I'm missing. Let me get back on my job here. Q&A, let's see what's happening over here. Are you saying mail or meal? Mail. I was saying mail. That's my Cleveland accent. Mail. I had a mail day where I actually gave everyone something tangible to make it customized. So I hope that answers your question, Ms. Rose. Okay, Kevin. Okay. The question disappeared. Hold on. Oh, yes, Kevin, if you take down my email and reach out to me, I have a lot of ideas because I have a learning disability. I have dyspraxia. It's in the dyslexia family, and it makes things a little harder for me to get. But once I get them, I got it. So I do have some thoughts for that. Absolutely. And you can get discouraged. I didn't know I had a learning disability until I was in my 30s. That's why I wasn't labeled and I didn't put myself in a little box. I just always came up with workarounds. But then I understood why I needed them. So I hope that helps. But please reach out to me, and I do have some ideas. You have a few more questions? Can you share this PowerPoint? Yes, that'll be coming. Do I do trainings outside of my state? Absolutely. I will be in South Carolina in 2 weeks for a CEA conference, the Correctional Education Association, partnered with Hawaii. And then I'm going to Alaska next month. So yes, I travel. Can you show your contact info again? Absolutely, I'll put it back up. Yes, the PowerPoint will be there. So let me go back and put my contact info. And Bethel, I am done. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Alisa, Coach Smedley. This was great. If she has her contact information up there, just contact her. If you have any questions about the book, I did put a link for the book in chat as well. So if QR code, can't use QR code, it's in the chat as well. You should get your certificate for the webinar within 24 hours. Just allow 24 hours after the webinar ends. And then the recording link will be sent to everyone. And then it will also be posted on our website as well. I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. Thank you so much, Coach Smedley. And thank you so much to Robert at Burlington English for sponsoring the webinar, and everyone have a great Wednesday. Thank you so much.